back to my channel if you've been here before, and if not, welcome. My name is Ashley, and I'm going to be doing my April TBR today. I feel like it's kind of late to do an April TBR just because we're over a week into April, and I've already read a couple of books. But because of the books that I'm reading, I can tell that I'm going to be a little off track if I don't hold myself accountable. So I'm going to be filming an April TBR. There's 7 books that I want to prioritize in the month of April, and then after that, April's going to be a pretty, busy month for me, and I know I'm going to be stressed out, so I want to read a bunch of romance, because romance is a huge comfort genre to me, and I want to be able to relax fully. So, I'm going to start and or prioritize with these 7 books, and then after that, I can read whatever I want. So the first book I really want to read, I showed it in my birthday book haul, but this is A Deep and Dark Blue by Nikki Smith. It goes into 2 twins, Hawk and Grayson, and they're actually part of a noble family, but there's a political coup that happens and their house is pretty much taken over and they're forced to flee, where they join a group of magical women and they hide there. And as they learn more about this group, they begin to realize that there's options available to them to reclaim this royal status of theirs. But the issue is, this whole time they've been posing to be women, and Gracie, previously known as Grayson, realizes that this actually isn't out of survival for her. She is a girl, and she's forced to deal with this new understanding of her identity and her relationship with her brother, as well as her relationship and role as being a part of the noble family. So this is going to be super interesting. I haven't read anything from Nikki Smith before, but the artwork is super cute. The story sounds great, so I'm very excited to read this. I also am really excited to read Freshwater by Akweke Emezi. I talked earlier in the year about how I read Pet by them, and I absolutely adored that book. And I had actually bought Freshwater at the end of 2020, and I had picked it up because one of my childhood best friends said that it was absolutely amazing, and when I read the synopsis, I thought it was super interesting. This particularly talks about Ada, I believe her name is. Yeah, Ada. And she's born in South Nigeria. She's always said to have these different personalities. She's always been quick and emotional. She has these violent fits per se. And after moving to America, she ends up experiencing trauma, and the trauma pretty much solidifies these different versions of her that have before been said to be because she has one foot on the other side. And she ends up getting pushed to the back of her mind as these alters of her pretty much take over as a form of protection. And I think this is super, super interesting. I don't tend to read a lot of characters who have DID, and I specifically don't get to see characters who have DID outside of horror and psychological thrillers and that sort, which while I can enjoy them sometimes, I don't like that perception that people with DID are violent, or that they're center of crimes or anything like that. So this will be interesting to really see how this character deals with DID, how they manage DID, and how DID has stemmed from this traumatic event that they've went through. So that should be really interesting. And like I said, Pet was amazing, so I definitely I'm so into Akweke Emezi's writing already, and I'm really excited for that. April is also National Poetry Month, so I want to pick up W.B. Yeats' work. This is the collected poems, so I think it's everything Yeats have ever written pretty much. And this is pretty thick, but it's poetry, so I should be able to get through it. I'm not planning to read this all in one go. I want to read it slowly over the course of April, and I'm actually going to be reading this with one of my friends, Kaylin, so I'm excited for that. I definitely enjoy poetry, but I feel most of the times the poems that I tend to I like one poem from one author, one poem from another author. So I'm trying to read a lot of collected works to see if there's an author that I really resonate with or really vibe with their like writing style in particular. Let's see what else. I also have my laptop here because I'm going to be reading some on audiobook, which I'm excited about. So the first one I'm going to cover is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, I believe. But Matt Haig's book basically goes into this magical library that exists between life and death, and basically you're able to see every single situation in your life and all the different paths that you could have taken and how those paths would have taken you to different points or different experiences and opportunities. And I just think that that's like a really beautiful way to look at life and death, and just the experience in particular of how we have all of this choice even if we don't realize it, and how every single decision we make does really affect us in life. So that seems super interesting. It seems a little like magical realism as well, so that's always really cool. And I have had it out at the library for, I want to say, over a week, so I have less than a week to read it. But it sounds really interesting, and it's a book that I've wanted to read for the last couple of months after I've seen it on BookTube so much, and people seem to really enjoy it. The other one I'm going to be reading is The Only Good Indians. This one I'm going to be listening to on Scribd, and out of all the books that I chose, this one and the next one I'm going to talk about are the books that I knew the least about going into them, but for some reason, every time I heard about it, I would forget immediately what the plot was about, but it was constantly on my radar, so I really want to read it now. And it's The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and it follows 4 American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. Tracked by an entity bent on revenge, these childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they left behind catch up to them in a violent, vengeful way. And I don't know what it is about that, but it's both very well stated and also spooky. So I think that's amazing for like a horror book. I haven't read horror in a really long time. And this is like a book written by an actual Native American author. Pretty much just the same thing as like Freshwater. I'm not used to reading these perspectives from like the actual people who experience these things, or from like a way that's genuine, that's outside of horror. So I like that this is kind of like a fantasy, but a fantasy in the point of like culture and like folklore, it seems like, but then it's horror itself. So I'm very excited for that. The author's Native American, so I'm very excited to read a Native American perspective that isn't like a white savior book, essentially. So very excited about that. And then I'm going to be reading The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is also going to be an audiobook on Scribd. I'm working my way through a bunch of classics, and I started last month To Kill a Mockingbird, and I finished it at the beginning of this month. So that I enjoyed. I didn't love it, but I thought it was okay. So now I'm going to pick up The Picture of Dorian Gray just because I heard a lot of good things about it. I know it's like a classical like fiction. In terms of the synopsis that I've been reading, I don't know fully what's going on. It says, written in his distinctively dazzling manner, Oscar Wilde's story of a fashionable young man who sells his soul for eternal youth and beauty is the author's most popular work. The tale of Dorian Gray's moral disintegration caused a scandal when it first appeared in 1890, but though Wilde was attacked for the novel's corrupting influence, he responded that there is in fact a terrible moral in Dorian Gray. And I just find that to be like super interesting. I love like the whole soul, like the whole trope of selling your soul to the devil or like being in love with the devil. It's always super intriguing to me, and I don't know why. But it's also like this old school kind of like fantasy gothic literature, and I'm excited to see that for sure. Plus, it's going to be my first work that I've read from Oscar Wilde. So, that should be interesting. And then the last book I want to prioritize in the month of April is Actor H.E. Brown. I've been loving the Brown Sisters series that Talia Hibbert's been coming out with, and I've started to read like some of her backlist because I've also really enjoyed it. But I don't know, it's something about watching like each member of this family like fall in love that I find to be so cute, so amazing. And I love all the sisters individually, so it's amazing to watch their like stories unfold, see who they are as individuals, see who they are in their like role as their family and as sisters, and then also get to see them fall in love, and it's been so fun. I always love like series like that. This one in particular, like Eve is supposed to be like the supposed like huge hot mess. She's the sister in the family who just never really has it fully together, and her parents like cut her off, I believe, and she ends up trying to work at an Airbnb because they're understaffed, and the guy who's there is like, absolutely not, I don't want her here, and he ends up becoming injured because I think she hits him with her car, and because his arm is broken, he decides to like hire her because he feels like he has no other options, and then they fall in love from there, so I'm like super into that. I also believe that he has autism, so that's going to be interesting to read as well. Talia Hibbert so far has been writing characters with like a lot of like emotional depth, and like the characters are really fleshed out as individuals, so you get to see everything that they've gone through. In her first book, she talked about like chronic illness. The second book, there was a lot of like talk about mental illness and mental health, and now this is like just neurodivergency, so I'm just like, I'm very excited for that. I love a good contemporary romance, and I've been enjoying like all of Talia Hibbert's works. Other than that, probably just gonna read a bunch of like werewolf fiction. I just started like a series for that recently. I have to finish up a couple of the mafia romances I've been reading because those have been like really good and crazy, and I might pick up a couple of buddy reads with my friends, but I'm very excited. I hope that you guys have like a really great reading month. Reading is like one of the best forms of like self-care for me, so I hope it's the same for you, and whatever you pick up, I hope it's really good. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.